So, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of In Conversation With. My name is John Lunn, aka Jonnychipz, and in this video series, we talk all things cloud with experts and advocates from right across the industry, covering a wide variety of topics from skills and careers through to technical overviews and softer skills. So whether you're watching this on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter or LinkedIn, thanks so much for tuning in. It's really appreciated. Please do take part in the chat below. Drop us a comment, a like, and if you could subscribe to the channel, that would be absolutely awesome. So my next guest is a cloud architect manager at the moment. He's an Azure MVP, a long-standing Microsoft certified trainer, public speaker, an author, and a security and Devsecops advocate. So currently based over in Washington, in the good old US of A, I'm super happy to give a warm welcome to my next guest on In Conversation With, Mr. Elkhan Yusubov. Hey Elkhan, how you doing? Thanks for joining me.
Hi, John. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you keeping, Elkhan? It's we've spoken before many times in the community,
Yes.
of course, and you've been on Jonnychipz Weekly a couple of times. But how you keeping? All good?
I feel great. Yeah, it's like thank you for invite. I I really like this series that you produce, and they are different and they are kind of friendly, and plus give feedback to the community in terms of what's going on and what are the people are doing and what they are interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we spoke briefly then off camera, but yeah, I mean that's the purpose of these videos really is to kind of,
Mhm.
help others kind of understand where we all fit because we're all people working in tech at the moment, and it's really cool to kind of speak to people like yourself, Elkhan, who are, you're doing phenomenal things across the community, helping others learn this wonderful world of cloud and technology that we kind of work in. So yeah, it's a great little window into our lives. I like to think of it as, and just gives people a little bit of perspective on things. Look, we've kind of got a loose agenda with a few great topic areas to talk around tonight. But I guess
Mhm.
before we jump into all that good stuff, do you want to give yourself a little bit more of an introduction? Maybe give us that kind of potted career history and tell us about what you're up to at the moment, Elkhan.
Sure, let me give it a try. So myself, actually, I was very lucky and honored because when I was in school, and it was like fifth grade, I believe, and remember that it was like those time when it was like Soviet Union was still alive because I'm
Right.
originally from Azerbaijan, yeah. And then in the school we didn't have actual computers, and only few schools actually received these computers as a aid. I believe it was from United States, from the
Hmm.
kind of as a help, to the developing countries or stuff like that. And you wouldn't believe, like, those computers arrived. They were IBM 286. Of course, there was no hard drive. It was 8 megabyte RAM, not gigs. We are talking about
Yeah.
megs here. And what we have to do is, like, every student had their own floppy disk, 1.4 44 MB, I believe,
Yeah.
and would just put that plug that in into the IBM computers, and then wait that to be loaded. And that's how my career started, like as a basic developer. The cranking the code there. Of course, it all starts with mathematics. You do like some equation and stuff like that. You didn't have too much graphic at that point, but then over time it ended up to be more of a interest and passion that ended up to be I'm graduating from applied mathematics and computer science, and then following the masters in computer science in Sweden. And then actually after that, that's, I would say, it's a you never know what the life will throw on your way. And I
Hmm.
was lucky that on my way I was shown that go and have an internship in Cardiff in Wales, where
You
you
did
are lucky.
mention that. You did. That's good to hear, Elkhan. Yes, I was surprised when
Yeah,
you mentioned that. That's cool.
yeah. That was like another great experience. Learning about Britain, about Cardiff, what are the differences, learning about the people. It was very, different and unique experience, I would say. And I really glad that, I went through that. I did some friends along the way, but the most importantly, while doing technology, being a web developer before, and then kind of climbing the ladder of the growth, I saw that one skill that's very important. That's being as human as you can be and having this kind of people skills, right? Because no matter what we do, how much, and no matter how you know top experts we are in the field, if you don't have these people skills, if you don't know how to convince the people and convey them the value of the things that we are doing, then you don't get much out of it. You can't go too
Mm,
far. So from that
yeah.
perspective, I would say currently yes. So, and coming back to tie up where I am now, basically over the years it ended up to be that I ended up in the United States, and then kind of do the web development basically here. And remember, when I came to the States, it was, it's like .NET 2.0
Hmm.
kind of, era where you have this SQL server. Microsoft started to put the SQL instances that have this Express, SQL Express that came. It was a
Hmm.
free. Before you have to pay for a license, right? There was no kind of community editions or anything like that. So it was
Oh
an
yeah.
opportunity for me kind of learn more about Microsoft technologies. And then I became, again, like Microsoft certified trainer by passing certain exams. And believe it or not, my first Microsoft official exam, I passed that in Cardiff.
Right. Okay. Which one was
Yeah,
that, Elkin? Which one did you
that
do in
was
Car?
like, .NET 2.0 framework development, something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
So you're aging yourself now. You realise that, don't you? You're giving away your age. But
Yes,
I
yes.
mean, this
But
is it's truly it's cool when I get to speak to people like yourself. Look, clearly you've travelled the world, Elkin, on your quest following technology, essentially. So from Azerbaijan, you mentioned that you spent some time in Russia. You
yes.
obviously over Sweden. You did your masters in Sweden. Moved to Cardiff for work. Did a stint in London, then over to the US. It's cool to see that, and I guess you've like you say you're picking up not just technology but you're picking up that different cultures, different ways to interact, and just to pick you up on that point about I guess those softer skills that you pick up along the way, we've been able to to talk to people, to talk to people with that the knowledge that you have from your technical world. I mean, I see that as well in my day job, is to be able to break the complex down into easy to understand, not to patronize people, but to
Hmm.
kind of make it seem real and put things into context and what that particular thing might mean to a particular company. So I guess you picked up some of that along your road through your career then, Elcom.
Yes. And one thing that, in addition to learning about different cultures and peoples, you also became much better in sympathizing with the people, understanding their point of view and perspective. And
Hmm.
plus, another thing that makes you a good human being is that when you try to understand the other person from the perspective of positive intent, that's like really
Yes.
makes a big difference. And that positive intent, that you can carry on, you would see that it's actually will brighten up your way in terms of your day-to-day job, your communication even within your own family and the friends and people that are surrounded you. So those kind of
Mm.
positive things, I would say, it's kind of choice that we as each human being are making. And it was actually big, I would say, surprise when I kind of started to realize that hey, being happy or not, or being nice and kind to the person or not, it's up to you. Actually, it's not
Mm.
about the environment and stuff like that. And one of the best examples is actually this the legend DevOps who passed away, the
Hey,
Albert Abel,
Abel,
sorry,
yeah,
Abel,
yeah,
yeah, Abel,
Abel
yeah,
Wang, yeah,
Abel
yeah,
Wang, yeah. I mean, his attitude was so impressing, so
100%, yeah,
impressing.
yeah.
And each time I remember him, I say like, there is nothing in the world that should make me unhappy. If I,
Mm.
kind of look into the way how he went through and where I am now and conditions where I am now, I say like, if that person find a way and happiness even in the hardest time in his
Mm.
life, then we should actually stay positive, stay happy, because this life is given to the people only once, and we have to, evaluate that in a positive, productive way.
Elkan, they're powerful words. If I'm being honest, and this isn't being over dramatic about the thing. I think they are. That's such powerful advice to people because I couldn't echo that any louder than what you've just said there. I think it's so true that it's too easy to be upset and miserable and to criticize and to pick holes. And I like you've just described, I made that choice to not ever try and do that. Have fun, be
Hmm.
yourself. You don't need to be fake. You don't need to put a persona on. Just positive intent is such a lesson I try and live my life by now. Um, and you mentioned Abel there. I had the pleasure of speaking to Abel. He came to one of the virtual Welsh Azure sessions at a Christmas event a couple of Christmases ago. And like you, I was blown away by how an awesome human being he was. And
Yes.
like you say, with the struggles, it's so easy to kind of dwell and look. Everybody has problems of their own.
Yeah.
Everybody has issues going on in their life, but I think yeah, it's such a powerful statement, Elkin. I couldn't agree with you more. And certainly anybody watching this, I guess it took me a while to recognise what that meant,
Hmm.
but to pick you up on that positive intent. I mean, what's it meant for you? How has it enriched your daily life, Elkin, with kind of living your life that way?
Sure. I mean, that positive intent actually start from the thing that there are a number of blessings that we take for granted, especially in the West, where we have, more or less social problems. And actually we are blessed in terms of, let's say like this, in the evening I have kids, okay, I have a family,
Hmm.
and during the evening time I have a pleasure to take my kids, my family, to the ice cream shop and say, hey son, which one do you want to pick up? That itself
Mm.
is a blessing, because as a dad, as a head of the house, if you are able to afford that, even though it's a small thing, but even being able to afford that and bring pleasure to your family, to the people that you are interacting day to day, that itself is a big blessing that it's not coming as a granted. Because if you look at some other worlds, like, no, don't go far away, just take the Ukraine. Is
Mm.
it possible
Mm.
to be done that type of thing in Kiev at this moment? Probably not.
Mm.
So that's why,
Absolutely.
like,
Mm.
living in the moment, and I would say, appreciating the moment that we are living through, no matter what type of hardship you are going through, appreciating the moment that you are living through actually brings a big relief to us, in terms of, like, you appreciate that, right? And
Mm.
secondly, you see it positively because you don't take it for granted. I believe that's where
Hmm.
it starts.
Here. I've got, the powerful words. I've got nothing more to add than what you just said, Elkin. It's so true. And, thank you for saying that, because I think it's too easy to pass over just that daily how you kind of live your life. And it may, to some people, it may seem a little bit cliche. To others, they may not understand that. But I think when you do what you do with community, a technical community, you're out there, you're a trainer, you're helping others who haven't got the same experiences that you've had in your life. You're trying to pass your knowledge on in a constructive way to help that person learn about technology. And in a way, that is you're giving back, I guess, Elkin, on a daily basis through your work and what you do with community and as a certified trainer. I mean, do you want to talk to me a little bit about that? How you kind of
Mhm.
became, how you moved into that space as a certified trainer, and what you're up to in that space at the moment?
Sure. Actually, believe it or not, but training thing that I went through and became Microsoft certified trainer, before that, I have been teaching the mathematics. Like, I have
Okay.
been teaching mathematics for the elementary school, and even
Hmm.
before that, I was kind of keeping in the neighborhood where I was living. I was helping the smaller kids with mathematics problems. So whenever they come from, and not everybody is, let's say, is blessed to have a family where, let's say, your dad and your mom is knowledgeable in terms of helping you with the school things. In some families, they just don't know. And
Sure.
I was in a neighborhood where there were such families. So I was helping those kids first, just out of the, kind of trying to be helpful to them, having positive impact on their lives. And then it
Mm.
ended up to be, after graduating from the college, there was like few around like 2 years while doing my master's degree. I had this part-time job, and I was doing mathematics in
Hmm.
elementary school again. Anyway, but that's a part that, just teaching, doesn't matter what you teach. The teaching itself as an experience give you this broad perspective of, how to help the people that you are teaching, and plus relate you in a way that they can understand you in a simple way, right? Because
Mm.
teaching is all about conveying the information in a way that the other person, the audience, understands you. And that thing you learn no matter what you teach. And if you like teaching, you will stay there. Otherwise, you will just run away, because teaching is not easy thing.
No, and just to pick up on that point and a little bit of personal feedback, I know you've been on the Welsh Azure user group, you've given a session, and personally, I was blown away by your style and how you portrayed that. So keep up the absolutely fantastic work, Elkhan. I've watched some of the other sessions you've been on, and you are doing a grand job. It has to be said in the industry at the moment. Like you say, I mean, I struggle that's one of the things I try hard to do, but I do struggle with conveying that message, in a simple way at times. But hats off to people like yourself, Elkhan, that seem to manage that in your stride, and you're doing some fantastic work. So, I mean, what else can we expect from you in that teaching space? Are you working on anything at the moment? I think you mentioned that you were doing some work with LinkedIn at the moment.
Yes. So thank you for mentioning that. So with LinkedIn, all my the people that I'm connected with, and as you are and others on Twitter and as well as on LinkedIn, that guys, there was this first course from LinkedIn called Azure Bicep First Look, which is intended to the people who never did infrastructure as a code in Azure and don't know anything about Bicep. So that
Mm.
course, actually, yeah, that was the first video course I produced for LinkedIn. uh, Sorry. And it looks like they were pretty happy with that, because they offered me another course to teach the Azure Architect infrastructure piece. Because in
Mm-hmm.
Azure Architecture exam, there are like four big pieces, and one of them is the designing infrastructure solutions for on Azure platform.
Sure.
So currently, I'm actually doing some work with LinkedIn in order to get that course, get that video prepared and be live, hopefully by the I believe it's going to be end of the second quarter when they're
Right.
planning to release it. But the biggest part there is like, I don't want to give too much things, but I want to convey again information during that video in easy way. And what I mean by
Yes.
that is, like, I just realized that, hey, I'm like the developer, or I'm an ops person who wants to become an Azure architect. And at that
Mm-hmm.
point, what I should do, right? So you kind of need to imagine, and in order to make that shift into architect role, you need to I put myself in their shoes. Basically, I'm a developer, or I'm an ops person, and here,
Mm-hmm.
here I need to learn about Azure architecture. I need to learn about how to solve the real problems, right? Because once I start my job, and let's say I pass my exam and I started a new job as an Azure architect, then what type of challenge should I, be prepared for? How I should communicate with the, let's say, CTO or CIO of the organization, or even like product manager, because they are not going to speak the same technical language that you do, but they will know the product information, they would know what's the problem, and they would have a vision how they want to grow their business, right? And
Mm.
at that point, as an Azure architect, you need to translate those requirements, those, I would say, visions, technological kind of modernization ideas into the real life by designing, planning, and helping the organization to move to either to move into the cloud, into Azure, or if they are already
Mm.
in the Azure, then how you can help them optimize on the cost, performance, or security, whichever is needed for them to succeed.
It is such a, I mean, it's bravo. I mean, well done for doing that work with LinkedIn Learning as well. And I'll be sure I'll be putting your Twitter handle and your LinkedIn profile in the video description below. So I guess people, if you're watching this, go and check that out to see if it's gone live, and take a look if you've got a subscription to LinkedIn Learning, which I have, and it's a great platform, and there's some great people across the community doing some fantastic courses in there at the moment. So yeah, well done on that front, Elkhan. I mean, in terms, you mentioned a few technical areas there in terms
Mhm.
of infrastructure as code, and helping people learn Azure from an architectural perspective. Look, they're hugely vast topic areas, I guess,
Yes.
and complex, and they can be broken down. But maybe if we talk a little bit about infrastructure as code, for argument's sake, you mentioned that you've done a video, the first look at Bicep. So
Mhm.
for those watching the video, I mean, and my perspective, we've got a number of different options, I think, haven't we, Elkan, in terms of which route we go down with infrastructure as code. I mean, have you got any good hints or tips to somebody coming at this from afresh? What does infrastructure as code mean to an operations person versus what might infrastructure as code mean to, say, a software developer? You know, have you got
Hmm.
perspective on that?
That's a great question, actually. So infrastructure as code can mean different things to different roles, as you mentioned, but the main idea behind is that how we can get into the space, into the situation where it's not basically we remove the human error out of the management of Azure resources. That's what it is, right? So infrastructure as code is, in another words, you are codifying your Azure, not Azure, your cloud infrastructure. It can be Azure, it can be any other cloud provider. You codify your resources, their relationships, and you of course version control that. And even
Mm-hmm.
though we speak about this, codification of the infrastructure, then kind of version controlling the change and everything. These things are really very important when you come to the compliance situation, when you come to the ATO and other very important things on which actually business is running. Because any business that running the workloads on the cloud solutions, they need to be compliant with certain things, right? And
Mm-hmm.
those compliances are are also covered with infrastructure as code. That's version controlling, change management, having some type of governance when there's change in the Azure infrastructure or cloud infrastructure where your workloads are running. This is what infrastructure as code brings, but it brings more than that. It also brings actually a peace of mind. Now you ask, from the ops perspective, right? From
Mm-hmm.
operations person's perspective, infrastructure as a code brings a peace of mind because they would know that, hey, here's the script and here's the, how I should run it. Once I run that, no matter what happens, I'm going to get the same result, in the environment where I'm doing that. So they don't have to worry about uh, finger typing or misconfiguring the system. That's from
Sure, sure.
operations perspective. From developers perspective, infrastructure as code is actually a great opportunity to learn about services, resources, and their connections in cloud infrastructure. Because as a developer, if you are given opportunity to do the infrastructure as a code, then you are not just doing your pieces of business logic, development of business logic for the product, but you are also going one step beyond that by analyzing, environment where your code is going to run and the
Mm.
services that needs to support that. And while again taking a codifying those services into the code, like into the infrastructure as a code, is basically infrastructure as a code is a descriptive way, how the resources, cloud resource should be defined and configured. That's what it is. And as a developer, once you do that, again, you get better understanding where your code is going to run, what are the services going to be utilized for that.
Yeah, no, that and that's a great way of describing it, I think, Alkan. I think one of the things that my observation about the industry over the last few years, or certainly with the advent of, the trending upwards of cloud usage
Hmm.
over the COVID past few years, is that many lines and many traditional IT disciplines have now kind of the lines have crossed and merged, where
Hmm.
all of a sudden somebody that was traditionally a networking person is now, you move that to the cloud, you kind of need to know a little bit potentially around ARM templates if you're using
Yes.
Azure, or even other infrastructure as code products like, I mean, using Bicep or Terraform and beyond. And if you're traditionally an infrastructure person, all of a sudden now you're kind of, am I a networking person? So those technological lines have been crossed. But then equally, what's your take on this world where, from an infrastructure as code perspective, you've got software developers effectively learning more about the infrastructure slash operational world, but
Hmm.
equally, you've got operations folk having to learn these new, or I say new, they're new to them, developer tools, things like Git and
Yes.
VS Code and coding and scripting.
Hmm.
Scripting should be in the kit bag. You would have thought of a typical operations person with
Yes.
PowerShell or whatever it may be. But I mean, what's your thoughts there on the way that the industry is going? Have you experienced that in when you've been teaching or whether you've been working in your day job? But what's your take on that, Elkan?
Actually, my take is that no matter what we do in the future, the coding is going to be part of it. It doesn't mean that we should be like top programmers or, kind of very skillful at coding. No, it just means that we need to have some basic understanding of coding concepts and how we can apply that into the platform where we are running that. And
Mm,
coming back to your question, like in terms of ARM templates, Bicep language, it can be like Terraform, Pulumi, or any other infrastructure as a code tool. It's out there. All of them are actually very useful and handful tools based on the purpose that you are trying to use it for, right?
mm,
And that's why sometimes as a person who has been speaking a lot about Azure Bicep, I get these questions, like is Bicep better than Terraform, or is it better to use Pulumi, or and my answer is like all of these tools are great tools based on the purpose that you are using for. If, for example, your team is very well structured and you have skills on Terraform, and your purpose is to produce the infrastructure using the same language or same script like Terraform in different cloud solution providers in different clouds, basically, then yeah,
mm,
your choice is good. It's sound, and you can use that and reuse that. However, for example, if you have ARM templates, you have investment into ARM templates, and you are just your organization is doing business only on one cloud, which is Microsoft Azure, then it makes, and you have this modernization project where you want to simplify the way how you would manage those infrastructure, those ARM templates. Yeah, then it makes sense to invest your time into Bicep language and understand the coding, because the simplicity and reusability that the Bicep language will bring into your management of Azure infrastructure would have such a big positive impact. It would be, I would say, just positive impact, but it also a place where Microsoft makes investments, right? So they make these infrastructure investments to make sure that they get into a place where they have infrastructure as a code tool, which is much better, or it's an evolution on top of existing ARM template. That's where
that
Bicep language comes.
that makes a lot of sense, and I guess when I was turning my hand to learning some infrastructure as code, so
Hmm.
whether it be Bicep, whether it be Terraform, it's one of those things, I guess, when you have to learn something new, or even if you're just interested, maybe you don't need to use it for your day job, but you
Yes.
want to learn it for your own ends. It may seem daunting at first, but I mean, my take is that it's not this big monster that some people might
No.
think. It's relatively straightforward to understand, and I guess courses like you put on LinkedIn Learning are a good place to start. Start with the basics, understand what its purpose is for, and how you might create a simple resource in a cloud platform to begin with.
That's a very good point. And I will just give another real world example, because that's how you can relate the technology to the ordinary learners, ordinary people and students. And that's very simple. Let's imagine that you are getting yourself ready for the Azure developer exam. It can be any Azure other exam, like it can be Azure admin exam as well, including
Mm,
the architect. So each time you want to do some labs, you have to provision resource, right? You would have to go to the portal. If you don't know anything about infrastructure as a code, you would navigate to your Azure portal, pick up your subscription, find the service, click on it. And of course, because the lab is not just one service, you would have to,
mm,
provision other services and then configure them, right? So imagine how much time will go into that. Let's say it's like
mm.
15 minutes if you have a good internet speed and Azure is, doing great job and,
Yeah.
not delaying too much things. And I will give you examples. Certain resources like Azure Cosmos DB can take up to like 10, 14 minutes to get provision.
Mm, mm,
So, and that's real thing. So what I'm trying to say here is that if you, and imagine there's like 6 resources you have to provision and configure, which will take you each time 45 minutes. So you have 2 choices. One choice, you provision them once, you have them running like 24/7 for a couple days till you finish your lab, right? And then you say, okay, I'm done with that lab. That's option one, which is a costly option, right?
Mm-hmm.
Second option is that you provision that once, uh, you learn what's the infrastructure code there, you take the ARM template, or you just do everything from scratch because you went and watched Azure Bicep first look on LinkedIn and you know how to do that. And then you save it, right? And then what happens? It's the end of the day. You did your lab for 2 hours. What you do, you just go and remove everything there. And next
Mm.
day, after the work, when you have like 1 hour time to do your labs, you just kick that code. Your environment get provisioned in 15 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever it takes, and then you work on it for 45 minutes. You are done. You remove everything. So
Yeah.
you see the benefit right away as a simple learner, how much time and how much cost you will save in the process. That's the simplest way just to motivate you to start with infrastructure as a code.
And that's a great hint, an absolute great hint. I mean, yeah, if you're spinning up labs and you need to use cloud resources, learn the infrastructure as code. Save it all in code form.
Yes.
Check it into a Git repo somewhere. Maybe learn a bit about Git at the same time. There's lots
Right.
of ways about it. But I know that you're very much a DevSecOps advocate as well, Elkhan.
Hmm.
So keep it on the technical theme at the moment because I'm liking the conversation around the infra as code bit. How do we you know, what's your take on DevSecOps? Because there's lots of different plays on the whole
Hmm.
DevOps word,
Yeah.
but bringing security into something like infrastructure as code, what does that mean in its most basic format, do you think, Elkan?
Sure. Actually, bringing security to production or to development process used to be a very, I would say, hard thing to do, because usually in traditional way, like couple years, like 5, 6 years ago, the way how security was integrated into your development was that it was
Mm-hmm.
done at the last stage before, kind of staging, or before going to the production, basically, where you have to kind of patch the things, make sure that whatever the security analyst found as an issue needs to be addressed and stuff like that. So it was more like after work, right? Which was
Mm.
actually costly if there's a big hole, in
Mm-hmm.
the developed software that you have. This advent of kind of this agile process, and plus move to the cloud and digitalization, and with the advent of basically CI/CD pipelines, right, where you have continuous integration and continuous development, then those things actually were also a point of view where, okay, saying that you can't just delay everything to the end for security. So that's why industry started to shift the security to the left, meaning that they wanted to shift it to the way where whenever the development actually happens, you actually integrate the security at that point. You don't wait till the product is mature, or product is ready for release. And that's done with the several tools. There's a bunch of tools in GitHub workflow. There's a bunch of tools in Azure DevOps you can integrate. Like there's a static code analysis tools. Like one of them is called is very famous. It's called what's the name? The one
Is it
that's,
white source? Is it
yeah,
white
white
source?
source. You also have like this traditional one called it doesn't come to my mind. It's
Yeah,
a
I know the one. Yeah,
Kubicon, or it's Q. It's starting with Q, I believe.
yeah,
What
quick.
was
It
that?
checks. It's the code scanner, isn't
Uh,
it?
it's a code scanner, yeah. But here's
Yeah.
the thing, no matter what tool you use, I mean, the name doesn't matter. The important thing is that whenever you use that code scan, and if that code scanner tells you that, hey, this is the vulnerability number from MITRE kind of, SVE something,
Mm.
that's the reason why it is bad. No, that's the reason why you should change it. Then it's a great education. It's a great, I would say, retraining, reskilling opportunity for the developers to understand where is the vulnerability, what's the reason that they are having that vulnerability, and take actions before your code gets pushed into the production. Or even like some of them happens even pre-commit. Certain
Yeah.
code scans you can run pre-commit, and then if it doesn't pass your unit test, your security unit test, and whatever tests you have, just stopping the code there, not making basically blocking it from being committed to the main branch. That's a lot of saved time, a lot of saved headache. And basically moving the security to the left saves you time in long term and avoids big costly reworks close to the end of the project.
That makes sense. I mean, just to pick you up on what you're talking about there, because there's a lot of terminology there, I guess, for
Mm-hmm.
somebody starting out fresh is maybe a little bit complex to understand. But I think my understanding of what you just said then is that effectively, if you've got infrastructure as code or you've got some form of a software development code base in a Git repository, before you commit that or deploy that to a production environment, you'll have this agent coming in and scanning that code and saying, actually, some of the libraries that you're using in that software or the binary files, they've actually got vulnerability that you might want to go and get sorted before you check it in. But so that's kind of, I mean, in my mind, that's like more on the software developer side of things. The one
Mm-hmm.
thing that I found really useful, and one thing that hopefully makes sense to people is when you do infra as code, we probably all do it with our lab environments, but we always put in that SAS key or that key that we use to connect to resources, and
Yes.
we always say that we trash the resources afterwards, but you always forget to. But things like that code scanning will even pick up things like that and say, hey,
Yes.
wait, stop. You've put a secret. You've actually got it there on a public Git repo. You might want to consider moving that out to a key vault or store it somewhere that you have to get authenticated to get access to it, which I thought was cool. And that I'm right in assuming that that's all part of this shift left movement in terms of introducing security at that level. Yeah.
Yeah, you are right into the point. And that tool name was SonarCube. So there's a Sonar
SonarQube.
Cloud and
Yeah.
SonarCube. That was kind of like I just looked into the search just to make sure I kind of refresh that. But coming back to what you just mentioned is very important. It's like even if that key that you mentioned can be like primary key connection string. It's
Mm,
basically sensitive information that you don't want to leak out. And the
mm,
best way to do that, as you mentioned, it's making sure that as a plain text, it doesn't get checked in into your code. And even if your code repository is a private, still, you want to make sure it doesn't get checked
mm,
in there. Because imagine that you have that connection string across like 10 modules within your software, right? And then you have to move your software between environments, or you have to make builds that go to the different customers, right? That are actually using your software. At that point, if you did that hard coding or it's kind of checked in into your repository, that's actually big security violation. Instead,
mm,
as you mentioned, you need to have some type of key vault, some type of secure vault where your software needs to be able to, at the start, go based on the credential it has, right? It can be managed identity, for example, in Azure. You don't want to make sure it's actually coded. To the managed identity, once they have access, they would go and fetch the correct connection string from that key vault, and that's where you actually not just introduce the secure practice in how your software is handling that, but also avoiding a lot of vulnerabilities, a lot of kind of soft spots, which will be a big headache. And actually, if you have those things and you have like proper audit of your system, of your software, you will be failing. And that tools, that scanning tools, code scanning tools, kind of security scanning software and libraries, they help you to stay ahead of that and kind
mm.
of basically help you to detect the things before they became a big issue, before they
Sure.
became a big trouble. Yeah.
No, that's cool. And thank you for explaining it, because I know that for, certainly for me, for a lot of other people, trying to understand what some of these terms mean, that's sometimes a challenge in itself, because, that we all know that tech is a really, a great place to be if you like acronyms and
Hmm.
buzzwords, and, they can mean different things to different people. And I guess we've still got a fair amount of that in tech, it's fair to say. So there's still that level of ambiguity. But
Sure.
Elkin, look, I mean, can we shift tracks quickly? Just to move on to back to community a little bit and talk about you and what you're doing in the community before we move on to the final question. But you've got a blog site up and running. I think that was the first time that we interacted was around some of the blog posts that you were doing with the Cloud
Hmm.
Marathoner website,
Yes.
which again links below. Tell me a little bit about that and what you're trying to do at the moment and what you're up to in community, Elkin.
Sure, thank you. So basically, the cloud marathon are actually born before the pandemic, right before pandemic, with the idea that, hey, if cloud is so uh, I would say cloud is so actually confusing, right? Because everybody's speaking different language and it's a new notions, a lot of terms. How we can simplify that and put in one place that's easy for the people to come and learn from. And plus, part of the cloud is being, a cloud marathoner. It's all about kind of uh, cloud upskilling, right? And what I mean
Yeah.
by upskilling is that if you are doing something that there is a certification for that, why not to go and learn certification? There are positive things that you can get out of it. And positive thing is that as a new starter where you have no idea what's the best practice, where to start, where to end, if you start learning what's the curriculum of the certification, what they say that you have to know in order to pass certain exams. It's not just getting the paper and certification, it's also about getting a structured learning experience of
Hmm.
developing your skills. Because once you do the labs, once you do all these good things that are coming with your certification kind of certification activities, and you share them on your GitHub, you share them on your socials, then people would know that, hey, you are up to something. You are doing some struggle to learn some new skills. And sometimes just because of that initiative, you can be getting like some recruiters, you can be getting certain opportunities that other people may be just wishing about. So long story short, I believe cloud marathoner is intended to help people to learn about cloud, mostly Microsoft Azure kind of services technologies. It is intended to share the study guides for the exams that I went through, and plus provide this kind of platform to the community to interact. Because I always say that, hey, this cloud marathon is not just my child; it is there to
Mm.
serve you. And if you would like to be a contributor there, send me a note, and I would be more than glad to put your post there and hopefully help you to kind of develop your blog posting skills so that you can get into the next level, right? Like that's one part of it. And second part is with the cloud marathoner. I while doing that, I kind of discovered there's a cloud lunch and learn
Hmm.
community there, which are also aiming to help the people through these sessions, like lunch sessions where they speak about certain technology and you know trying to help people to learn about them. So I became core member of that Cloud Launch and Learn team, and trying to mentor the sessions there, kind of help with different marathon-related activities. And I would say all that actually were very great opportunities, because due to this type of different events where I was able to learn about you, John. I was able to learn about other very great community people out there in Cloud Family and get connected.
It's great. You're right. There are so many awesome people out in community, like yourself, Elkan, always willing to help others. With as we all are, we're all learning. We're learning on a very frequent basis. I think it's fair to say it's. I think it's one of those things with cloud computing. It seems that we all need to stay in this mindset of learning
Yeah.
consistently and constantly, I guess. So get used to that learning exercise, which, look, Elkan, it's been super fun. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me. But it kind of leads on to my final question with you and final topic area, really. And it's something I always ask every guest that comes on. But, on that topic of learning and constantly learning, why are we doing all of this learning, do you think, Elkan? Where do you think the industry is headed towards? What's your next big bet? What's your vision of the future with technology, do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question. I believe next big thing would be everybody see it differently. Being honest, some of us see that on Web3, right? This metaverse.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us see that in blockchain and applications of the blockchain and Bitcoin, right? Some people are into that and seeing future there. But I
Mm-hmm.
see a future, no matter what technology would be there. I see future as a place where good communicators who have the good networking skills and trying to understand the other people's perspective, relate to them, and plus be a good, I would say, no matter what you do, being a good person and leader and kind person. That's where I see, where, but that's the basically, pathway that I see, that I think that will make anyone much better person and successful in the future, no matter what technology you choose. But overall speaking, like about technology and cloud, I see that shifting more toward, multi-cloud kind of environment where you would have more than one cloud. However, it doesn't mean that, there would be like it doesn't mean that there would be multi-cloud that you have to know everything. No, you would
Hmm.
have to have this general knowledge in terms of understanding the concepts and have this T-shaped kind of qualification or that expertise. So that, for example, even though you are broadly knowledge, you have to be, for example, expert at least in one area. Like it can be DevOps, it can be your data analytics, it can be, software development where you are using the cloud services, but you need to be specialized. That's where I see that going.
A perfect answer, and it kind of brings us back in full circle. Actually, just to echo that the powerful words that you use at the start of this video, and we kind of ended on it, is really about that positive mindset. We're all in this together. We're all learning on a rapid basis. Elkhan, thank you so much. Are there any last parting words of wisdom or thoughts that you'd like to drop in before we bring this to a close?
No, thank you, John, for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here, and thank you for great questions and running this series of conversations and events. I find it very useful, and I always watching them. So I would advise everybody to watch as well. Thank you.
No, thank you. It's all my pleasure, Elkhan. Thanks for being such an awesome guest, and keep up the awesome work that you're doing in community. And I'll catch you very soon across the social media.
Sure, we'll catch you soon.
Bye for now. Thanks, Elkhan.
Bye.